Okay. Hello, welcome. Nice to see you all here. My name is Mia. I am a member of the Robbinsdale for Racial Justice group, and I'm a resident in Ward 3 near Lee Park. And we are having our very first conversation with Mr. Charles Austinson, our Robbinsdale Ward 1 City Council candidate. So thank you, Charles, for speaking with us today. The intention of this meeting is to hold a conversation about racial justice and equity issues as they pertain to our elected officials ahead of our general election on November 3rd. Members of the Robbinsdale for Racial Justice group have come up with a few questions, and we presented these questions to Mr. Austinson a couple days ago. We are here to listen and become better informed voters. And for those of us who are white members of the community, we are here to be better allies to our neighbors who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We will allow space for follow-up questions from the audience at the end. And as always, white people will defer and listen to BIPOC members when they have something to say. This meeting is recorded and will be posted with our previous candidate conversations. For the time being, we will keep audience microphones off. But as always, you're more than welcome to, put questions, follow-up questions in the chat if you like. And we will try to keep our meeting to about 45 minutes. So we'll invite Charles to give us a little introduction, and then I will jump into our questions. And then with time at the end, like I said, we can open up for follow-up questions from the group. So we'll try to wrap up just before 7:45. And then at that point, Charles can let us know how to get in touch if there are further questions.
Sure.
Okay. So Charles, thank you so much for being here. It's really nice to meet you. Do you mind just giving us a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. And thank you, Mia, for having me. And thank you, folks, for putting this on. These are important issues, and they need to be discussed. And I'm hoping that I can provide some information on things that I'd like to do, and hopefully that they can be fruitful. My name is Charles Austinson, or Charlie. I am born and raised in Robbinsdale. Well, technically I was born in Minneapolis, so it's, to be transparent, that's on my website. I was born in Minneapolis, but whatever it is, 2 days later or 3 days later, my parents brought me home to my first house in Robbinsdale on 4004 Crystal Lake Boulevard. And grew up there my whole life, boyhood, adolescent, high school. I went to Armstrong High School, and into my early adult years. I went off to college, came back, lived at home for a little bit, moved out, moved back, lived at home for 1 year of law school, believe it or not, and then finally got a job, and so I could move out. I've lived in Robbinsdale since then for the last 10 years with my brother, John Austinson. He's a school teacher at Armstrong right now, and has been a teacher in the district for quite some time. I give that background just because I have a lot of history with this city. I've done a lot in this city, grew up, had a lot of different perspectives. And so these issues are important because if these things, if there's discrimination, if there's inequities going on in the city that I care about, it hurts, because it was a wonderful place to grow up, and it still is a wonderful place to live, but it's got to be a wonderful place for everyone. So with that, happy to field questions, and looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have questions around 6 topics that this group has submitted and organized in advance. By the way, these same questions will be asked in the same order to any other candidates who meet with this group. And we have plenty of time per question, so feel free, Charlie, to elaborate as you like. And if it's okay with you, I'll just kindly ask to wrap up any answers if they go beyond 5 minutes. I don't think that will necessarily happen. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Just to keep on pace with our timing today. So, and then we'll hold off. I will hold off on any follow-up questions, and then the audience is more than welcome to ask questions at the end. So our first question, the amount of unchecked power held by the city manager is alarming to many members of the Robbinsdale for Racial Justice group and is directly related to racial inequity in Robbinsdale. What are your thoughts on Robbinsdale's current government structure And do you have any adjustments you'd like to see to work towards equity for BIPOC? And what are they?
Good question. At the outset, and maybe this can be answered in the Q&A, I'd like to know what these direct, alarming issues are. That's, sorry to pardon the pun, but that's alarming to me that there is some pushback yet at city administration for some of these questions. And so if I could know what those are, perhaps at the end we can discuss it more, circle back, that'd be great. In terms of the structure of city government, it's the standard structure that you see everywhere. And I know you guys have heard this analogy before, but I think it's appropriate again to say it's sort of like the residents are the shareholders of a company. They kind of own the city. And through their vote, they elect the board of directors, which is like the city council. And the city council then appoints and hires, the administrator, the CEO. And that person then hires everyone below them, just similar to a company. And so the structure, that hierarchy, I think is the same. I think that's going to remain the same. I don't have any novel ideas on how to change that structure. But given that structure, there can be bureaucratic obstacles. And if that's what's going on, if there are complaints that are being voiced and they're not being heard by the appropriate people, then maybe we have to switch the channeling on how complaints are heard or their issues are broached in the community. One example that I think could be used to sort of bypass sort of the bureaucracy, for lack of a better word, if there are issues pertaining to racial justice that aren't being met at the city level, perhaps the structure should be, we have a human rights commission that is set up to enforce or to at least be the watchdog for the Minnesota Human Rights Act. And it would be nice if we had a liaison with that group, with city council, to field complaints, to field issues. And so those issues are reported to the city council directly. I'm pretty sure that's legal. I can't imagine why we couldn't be able to do that. Maybe it's done already. I'm not sure. I'm not on the Human Rights Commission. I'm on the Charter Commission. But I don't want to see complaints get bogged down in city bureaucracy. I had a personal complaint about how a former city prosecutor handled an issue. I went right to my city council member. I didn't bother going to the city attorney or city manager saying, how does that work? What can we do? I went right to the horse's mouth and said, I don't like what happened with this prosecution of this case. I'm an attorney, by the way, so I kind of knew the issue, and it involved a criminal complaint filed against a resident that should never have been filed. And so if there's a ways to circumvent the bureaucracy for these issues to get to City Hall, that would be my suggestion. It may be done already, but that's what I would like to see. But again, I want to know what those alarming issues are that are, use the word direct. Direct is, it's direct. And so I want to know what those are.
Sure, yes. And again, I'll open it up to the group if you want to chime in the chat. That's something that we can discuss further, definitely, at the end. So I will move on to our second question here. So when discussing racial equity, it is also important to think about the intersection of Black and Brown lives and the lives of the LGBTQ community. Would you support flying a pride flag at City Hall or on the light posts downtown? By the way, this question has many parts. Second part, would you support flying a Black Lives Matter flag? If you don't agree with a Black Lives Matter flag or banner, would you support a Blue Lives Matter flag or banner, and why? And then finally, how would you respond to criticism from residents regarding these decisions?
Sure. My general position is I do not support any flag that has any political ideology or advances any group identity or any movement of any kind. I take that neutral position that Robbinsdale should be, if it's truly going to be welcoming to all, then we either got to let people fly everything they want to fly and have equal opportunity for everybody's cause, however noble, however great, and however moral. But Robbinsdale should, in terms of flags and banners and things like that, Robbinsdale should keep to being as neutral as possible. If Robbinsdale wants to, through a resolution, celebrate Pride Week or Pride Month, then by all means, and just like the holidays, fly it. But until that happens, I don't think that the city should be, picking and choosing. Let me give you an example, and it relates to the Blue Lives Matter flag, but let me give you an example of a flag that I think is actually kind of cool because I'm a history buff, and that's the Gadsden flag, which is the Don't Tread on Me flag. It's yellow, it's got the snake. I'm a history buff, particularly early American history. And so to me, that flag is just a cool, it's American Revolution. I just think it's a cool image for that. But that is used by Tea Party activists. And so even if the intention was at the city level to say, hey, we're going to honor early American history or, on that, and somebody might say, yeah, but for whatever reason, however innocuous the flag is, or however innocuous you think the flag is, for some people, it's an offensive idea. It's a politically driven idea. And I don't think people would feel welcomed by that. You could say the same thing for any cause. If a pro-life group wants to celebrate national right to life and have the city sponsor that by having banners on Main Street, the city should remain neutral. And it's probably not the answer you want to hear, but the city should remain neutral with respect to that. Having said that, the Blue Lives Matter, the fact that, if you're going to support one and not the other, I think proves my point that there is division on some of these things, no matter how noble. The thin blue line flag does honor fallen police officers. So you'd think everyone wouldn't have a problem with that, but people disagree. There's certain political movements that sort of usurp otherwise good intentions and good symbols and stuff. So at the police station, would I have a problem with that? Probably not, because it's the police. We did have an officer who was killed in Robbinsdale, murdered in Robbinsdale by a white man. John T. Scanlon, I don't know if you guys know about that. There's a park named after him. I was a boy during that. I remember that. I remember the sirens going crazy across the lake. We lived on the lake there. We could see across, and I remember how bad that was. But I also recognize that right now there's a lot of tension between citizens and police, and some citizens might not like that. And so again, I would defer and say, let's try to be as neutral as we can. And so if the blue line flag or the Blue Lives Matter flag offends people, I think we need to take a serious look at that and say, maybe we shouldn't fly it. So.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, number 3, we acknowledge racism is systemic in our nation and in our city. What particular systems in Robbinsdale strike you as underserving or perhaps even actively harming our BIPOC community? And what thoughts or plans do you propose to address them?
Well, the biggest issue, of course, is policing, but I'd like to reserve that to the last question if we could, because I have a policy program that I want to put in place.
Okay.
One issue that I don't know if is underserving, but if it is, that's going to be problematic with me, and that's youth sports and parks and recs in Robbinsdale. I grew up in Robbinsdale playing Robbinsdale Little League. I played Robbinsdale youth football. I tried to play Robbinsdale basketball. I wasn't too good. I was quite the baseball player though. But Robbinsdale at the time, and even I have my brother's 8 years older than me, so he played Robbinsdale Little League in the late 70s. There was always an attempt and always a welcoming to allow kids from the near north side to play Robbinsdale youth sports. And it's not to say that everyone from the near north side is a person of color, but there is more of that. There are more people of color living in the near north side than there are in the city limits of Robbinsdale, and that's controversial. But there was an effort to allow kids to play in our leagues, and I hope that remains. I'm not married, I don't have children. So I'm not totally in tune with that, but I would like to, I certainly hope that is still, that those efforts are being made to, for lack of a better word, market to those children who live in the inner city for that. I don't want to step on Minneapolis's toes. They have their own programs, but what was great is for me growing up is, a lot of my friends that I became great friends with and still am friends with today, you meet through sports and you meet through community activities, because maybe they go to a different school. They live in North Minneapolis, or they go to St. Austin's, they go to the Catholic school over there. And that was an opportunity for me to grow up with kids who might not certainly aren't the same ethnicity as me, don't have the same economic advantages as me. And it was just a great opportunity to meet with other people who, are different. And Robbinsdale should continue to push that. Related to that, and I know that these programs are out there, but again, equipment is an issue for getting, kids to play. I imagine there are programs out there. I don't know if the city's going to do it, but certainly the city should work with local businesses to donate money for equipment and things like uniforms and things like that. No child in Robbinsdale should go without the opportunity to play and be active because of money. And again, I'm not drawing the analogy there, the assumption that everyone who's doesn't have money is poor, or is a person of color, but the two do correlate. And so I think it's tough to talk about one without talking about the other. Finally, again, non-sports programs, we need to do more. Not everyone plays sports, so maybe there's some community theater, some community arts that can bring people together. And that I had the opportunity to sing with J.D. Steele. I don't know if any of you know who he is, but he's a professional singer. He sang with Prince. And I had the opportunity to sing in a choir, the Capri Glee Club over in North Minneapolis, which is really a real treat. Those things, I'd like to see, if there's effort to get those, I'd like to see the city try to implement those things. So they're not system-wide, but if there's pushback on that, again, I'd like to see more development there. I do have a question on, again, this can go to to maybe towards the end. There was, in seeing some of these other interviews, there were some discussions of parks and recs and how they were underserving, people of color. There was a reference to, are you going to fix the basketball hoop at Manor Park? I can only speculate that certain people were playing basketball and they didn't want them playing basketball. And so they said, I got an idea. Let's not fix the hoop and then they won't come. Sort of like, if you don't build it, they won't come, I'd like to know what that is. That kind of concerns me. So if someone could enlighten me to that issue at the end, or even now for that matter, that'd be great. But I think this was probably the hardest question of the six. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it's okay with the group if I speak a little bit more about the park, since I was a part of many of the prior conversations. And around the parks, I think the concern was that the basketball courts being removed might affect more of the BIPOC community.
Sure.
Compared to having multiple baseball fields
or hockey
Robbinsdale.
rinks.
Or hockey rinks, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So it was just, the question for the other conversations was, do the parks in Robbinsdale serve all communities? And right. I believe, and again, to the group, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it comes from what types of sports are available. Sure. And again, are they serving all,
right.
All groups?
That's a great point. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Rafe. Some of you may know him. He lives right across the street from Sanborn Park. And Rafe's a big basketball player. He was a star at Cooper High School. His sister actually was, I think, the leading scorer ever at Cooper High School. But if you look at the basketball court at Sanborn Park and compare that to the two hockey arenas we have there, or not arenas, but hockey facilities, Rafe always complained, it's pathetic. You can't even shoot a real 3-pointer, and so people might find this trite or silly or, insignificant, but, is there a design like, hey, we don't want, people playing basketball because that draws the wrong crowd? That's sick, frankly, for lack of a better word. They should be the Parks and Rec should reflect all of the major things that everyone likes to do. And if certain groups of people happen to overutilize a particular facility, then God bless them. I mean, that's what they're there for. So, I took my dog to the Minneapolis dog park today because they have a great dog park. If people from North Minneapolis want to come in here and play basketball at our courts because they're better, then, that shouldn't be a problem. I remember back in the 1980s when I tried to play basketball, but we used to have a Robbinsdale Community Center it was actually the old high school and the old junior high. They had two basketball courts there, and they'd run full court. And it was a lot of, it was a diverse crowd, for lack of a better word, and great basketball. and they'd run full court up there. And the only problem there is not necessarily who was playing, but you could never get, if you were young, you could never run with the full court games. So they kind of my dad went down and said, look, if we're going to have 2 basketball courts, at least one of them should be half court for the kids to shoot around and learn, and you can run full court in the other one. But that's always been, when that community center was available, that was always a hotbed for good basketball. And, it's sad
and that's the one on, on Regent, like Regent and 42nd.
It was on Regent, yeah. It was the old junior high. It was actually the old Robbinsdale High School, and then became the junior high. And it was just great basketball. Like in the late 80s, early 90s, you go up there and it was all the varsity players would play with college guys, and they'd be 40-year-old dudes who dunking on people, and it was great. And there was never any issue. There was never any, why are these people here? And so,
okay.
Sorry, I'm a little long-winded. I'm a little.
No, that's okay. Thank you. And I hope that, yes, again, to the group, if, there are more follow-up questions around this, feel free to ask for the end. But let's move on to the next topic here. So next question, what are the community, governmental, and logistical obstacles that you anticipate having when working towards racial equity?
Yeah, this is also a difficult question, and probably I'm going to deliver a rather esoteric answer. I think the obstacles to government in trying to implement, change is, it's government itself. We need to recognize that government can do things very, very well, and oftentimes it can do things not so well. Government is great at getting people to stop doing certain activity. Government is terrible at getting people to start doing certain activity. So if you want, to create cultural change, government, in my opinion, in my observation, in my studies, doesn't really do a great job. So the chief impediment would be relying too much on government, the city administrator, the city council to affect this change. This isn't a punt. I'm not saying we can't have any involvement, but contrast that to private organizations that like yourself here, who are organizing people of like-minded values to go out and say, we're fed up. We have an issue here. Let's organize. We got the power of social media. We're going to be the watchdogs now. We're going to go out and do the recruiting. Private citizens organize block parties. Residents organize block parties. Residents organize Robbinsdale Little League. Residents organize Robbinsdale for racial justice. And so, if you want more racial equity in certain things, the starting point is Robbinsdale Little League. It's Cub Scouts. It's your book club. It's churches. And more importantly, with respect to the interplay with with the city and what the city does, let me give you an example, because I'm on the charter commission and we just ran into this. There was a proposal to have the charter commission do more to reach out to people to better reflect the membership of the charter commission should better reflect the population at large with respect to race and gender. Very noble goal. No one should be against that, and we need to do more to work towards that. But then again, the question becomes, what can government do to get people to sign up, as opposed to what can private organizations do to give people the information to encourage them to sign up? So there were basically 2 options, are not on the table, but there's really 2 ways of looking at this. The proposal was get the charter commission to actively recruit people, or the city council to actively recruit people, which I thought was, number one, not our job responsibility, and number 2, not something that we have the real means to do. I don't know who wants to be on this thing, and I would have to go advertise who's going to be on this. The better option, I think, is to have a group like yourself, who's in tune with the BIPOC community, to say, okay, we know that these opportunities are out there. They're not being disseminated to the community. What can we do with the charter commission or the city to make sure that this information is disseminated? So if we could have a liaison between the people who care and the people who are on the commission to say, how do you get on it? What's the application process? How does this work? And can this be more easily accessible in terms of websites and mailings? Then that might be a solution. I'd have the same answer if someone were to say, what can we do to increase the people of faith who have right to life issues on the Human Rights Commission? Maybe perhaps they think that's a human right issue, and I think they do. It's not up to the Human Rights Commission or the city to go out and start recruiting, people of faith to be on commissions. It's up to the community of faith to say, do we want to be on this? Do we need representation? Let's seek out some information from the city, and let's market ourselves and reach out to our own people. So there's got to be a two-way street, a partnership between private organizations, private groups, and the city to do that sort of thing. Because again, it gets to the idea of, if you rely on government to do that, which it really doesn't do all that well, you're just going to be met with frustration.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question. What is your vision or plan for the city to do more to support minority-owned businesses? And how would you, as a city council member, recruit, encourage, and provide support for Black business owners looking to open in or relocate to Robbinsdale?
This is a great question. I actually brought this up at the forum. I'm a business attorney. I think entrepreneurship and business growth is vital, not only to a community, but to certainly underdeveloped communities or other underserved communities. The biggest issue is, number one, the city should promote and have an active promotion of minority-owned businesses. There should be a business expo every year. Chamber of Commerce can be involved. They should be involved. And the existing businesses need to be. We need to know where they are. I said this in the forum. I think the Dairy Queen's owned by an African American, and I found that out because I was in it was like November and it was unseasonably warm, and I saw that it was open, and I'm like, I'm getting a blizzard. This is great. And I asked him. I said, "You're open?" He's like, "I'm open as long as they let me be open." I'm like, "Fantastic! Give me a large peanut butter cup. I don't need it, but I want it." That wasn't the case. That Dairy Queen, if you've lived here long enough, that thing shut down at like Labor Day. And it's nice to see, a stable business like Dairy Queen, minority owned. And I go there all the time. I probably shouldn't, but I go there all the time. How do you promote minority owned businesses, or how do you make it easier for them? I think you need to look at regulation. I think you need to look at zoning ordinances in particular. I would like to make it as easy as possible for somebody to open up shop in Robbinsdale. Again, not making the assumption that people of color don't have money or anything like that. But again, there's a correlation between income, wealth, and race. And if you're starting out and you're, like my father was a stockbroker, even though he came from very meager means in North Minneapolis, 6 kids in a 2-bedroom household, and he was a high school dropout. Eventually got the GI Bill, got a degree, and became a stockbroker. So I had some business acumen early on, just talking with my dad. I don't know if everyone has those opportunities. And so, raising capital is hard to do, and you have limited means. And so zoning alone might be an impediment to starting a business. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to keep this kind of anonymous because you'll understand why. Near my house, there is a African-American man who seems to be working on cars on the side of the street. And I don't know if it's his car or somebody else's car. I don't know if he's doing it for free or he's charging. And my argument is, so what? And who cares? Great. If that's what he needs to do to earn some extra money, and that's the start of his business, then that's great. That shouldn't bother anybody, because if he needs to do that to raise the capital to finally get his dream, which might be a mechanic shop, that's great. And I'm speculating here. I just see different cars all the time, and he's putting on brakes or different tires and things like that. And certainly that street is not zoned for commercial activity, but does it really bother anybody? Should it bother anybody? That's where I'm more of a laissez-faire, advocate, getting people to start businesses, making it easy as possible, because they're impediments to people who don't have that that capital, that stock, that you know, born wealth. And so that's an issue for me. And that, related to that, and Robbinsdale already kind of has a program, but I had to dig around about it. As I stated, my dad's a stockbroker, so we talk business a lot, and I have an economics degree. And so if I ever wanted to start a business, we have a family lawyer. We have my dad did his own taxes, and we talk about that stuff. I don't know if everyone has my upbringing. Certainly they don't, not everyone. There are people who want to start businesses who don't know how to get that going. Like, what is a limited liability company? What do you mean I have to file quarterly tax returns? I would like to see, there is a program in Robbinsdale, it's called Open to Business, but I had to dig in the Robbinsdale website to find it. And I would like either one of two things. That's got to be upfront and open and maybe circulated to people. Maybe there's a seminar we put on. Again, maybe chamber gets involved. But there's no reason why we can't have, you know, educational seminars on how do you start a business. I would really love to start selling my cookies that I bake that everyone in the neighborhood seems to love, or I really want to start an auto mechanic shop, or I want to start a catering business or whatever. I don't know a single thing about what to do. And there are people in the community, professionals who do this for a living. I mean, I'm one of them. I can tell you, okay, this is what LLC is and what it means to have limited liability. And so if those resources could be made available to people, of course, they'd be made available to all people. But again, I don't want to make assumptions, but if there are more people of color who don't have, again, that sort of business upbringing than I had, I think that would be a program that they could take advantage of. But there is something called Open to Business. I think we need to get that out and open, because it's kind of doing the same thing. But that would help minority businesses or minorities who want to start a business. So.
Okay, thank you. Say the name of that organization again. It's
Open to Business, T-O.
Open to Business.
If you go to the Robbinsdale website, and again, getting back to what impediments are there, all Robbinsdale can do is throw this website on there, or maybe send flyers out. It's up to an organization, I would say, like yours, to say, look, we want to create more minority entrepreneurship. Hey, guess what? We found this website and this organization. Let's disseminate it. Let's put it on our Facebook page. Let's put it on our social media. But it's open to business. If you go to Robbinsdale website, go to the business, it lists all of the businesses, you know, all the way down. You scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that there's this link for free consultation on opening up a business. And I think it's run through the Hennepin County, and it seems like a great program, but how would you know about it?
Interesting, yeah. Yeah,
I had to dig.
Personally not aware
I thought
of
I
it.
had this brilliant idea in my head, and I'm like, no, somebody's already thought of it. So.
Okay, well, good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
I do want to move on to our final prepared question for you, and that is, how would you leverage your role as city council member to foster a more racially just Robbinsdale? Yeah,
so this is a big issue for me. This is a platform issue for me, and it involves policing. And I want to, if I could explain my program in detail, what I hope to do, and then give you a little personal anecdote of what happened to me, and it'll kind of bring things into context. I think we need better police community relations. If you think, and I talked about this in the forum, if you think about your interactions with cops, they're never really good. You are either the victim of a crime, and they're there to take your information and, you know, just the facts, ma'am, dragnet stuff, or you're getting cuffed, or you're getting the ticket. And they're very, I don't want to say standoffish, but it's a very kind of, I said, icy relationship, excuse me. So how do you break that? How do you get to the point where I talk about that statue that sits outside of the Robbinsdale Police Department with the cop holding the little boy's hand? Is that something that they really, you know, that we really believe? Is it attainable, or is it just to make us feel, you know, is it just there for show? My program would be, it's like, it basically is coffee with a cop, but they take it to our neighborhoods, and every police officer does it. And it happens at every day, or almost every day, in different neighborhoods in Robbinsdale. So Let me explain how this would work. We have the 4 wards, and we have 20 some police officers or something like that, they say. You take the 4 wards and you divide that up into either 2 or 3 neighborhoods, whatever is feasible. And as a job requirement, every police officer for 4 hours a month should be able to, or must go to on a specific day, every month, rotating days, go to a neighborhood, make themselves available for any type of discussion, friendly discussion. I won't like necessarily complaints, because I want to make it more friendly, more community engaging, where people can get to know our police, and our police, more importantly, can get to know us. And so how this would work is, imagine it's the 3rd Wednesday of the month, and you're in Ward 2, and 2 officers will, from 4 o'clock until 8 p.m. will be at Peace Lutheran Church, and the city will provide coffee or something like that. And it's voluntary. You can go up there if you want. If you don't care, you don't have to go, but the police will be there to interact, talk, ask questions, get to know them. There's a little bit of maybe, Mayberry that, I don't have any delusions of grandeur that this is going to make everyone get along, but there is something to be said about your police officer knowing who you are and knowing your face and knowing where you live. And if you are concerned, you can go to the different ones every day. So you can say, I'm going to go meet the other officers on the following day who are at Ward 4. And where I'm going with this is, if I could, tell a personal story. In 1994, I was pulled over by a police officer for taking a left turn on a red light at 81 and 40th Avenue North. And I'm sitting in the left-hand lane, and it's a red light, red arrow, but it's green. And so I'm looking at my brother, and I say, hey, there's no sign there. There were those signs that said no left turn on red arrow, which doesn't make any sense if you can never take a left turn on a red arrow. So I take the left turn on the red arrow. I said, well, there's no sign here. I can take a left turn. Cop was two cars behind me, Robbinsdale police officer. It's 1994. It's August. It's summer. I'm 17 years old. He pulls me over, license and registration. I give him my license and registration. Goes back to the car. Now, at this point, he can see that I have a pristine driving record. I've never been arrested. I have no criminal record. The car is fully insured. It's owned by my parents. And I live on Crystal Lake Boulevard, which, if any of you know, is a fairly nice block. The officer comes back to the car. Actually, I explained to him, he asked, do you know why I pulled you over? And I explained to him the confusion about the signs and all that. Anyway, so he gives my stuff back. And this is where it gets bad. He said, get out of the car. And this is like 7 p.m. on a summer night. Get out of the car. So I get out of the car. I look at my brother. I'm like, this is weird. I get out of the car. He said, put your hands on the trunk and spread your legs. So I'm doing the whole hands on the hood, legs spread, and he proceeds to give me, proceeds to frisk me. The whole 9, the hand up the leg, on the crotch, the whole thing. I remember to this day, I remember what he looks like. He then, finding nothing, tells me to get back in the car and go home. It took me 15, and I went home and I told my dad about it, and he was livid. And then my mom is like, don't complain, nothing's gonna happen. They're unionized, you're never gonna get anything out of it. So we didn't do anything about it. You just take it. It took 15 years later, when I was in law school taking criminal procedure, I realized that police officer at that moment had violated my constitutional rights. I learned the case law on it. You cannot frisk anybody unless you have a reasonable belief that they are carrying a weapon. Now, there's no way on God's green earth that anybody, given the facts of what was going on, would ever believe that I had a weapon. Yet the cop did it anyway. And so if we had the program that I want to put in place, I think it's less likely the cop would do that. He would know that after he's done that, he might go meet my dad at that meeting and be required to face the public for something like that. And so it's kind of a check on abuse of power. On the flip side, if I went to the meeting and the cop knew me and saw me, maybe he goes, oh, that's Charlie Austinson. He's a decent kid. I don't have to worry about him. And so I'm thinking, if this can happen to a 17-year-old white kid who lives on one of the nicest blocks in Robbinsdale, what does it do to the 17-year-old black kid who doesn't live on the nicest block in Robbinsdale?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to him? You know, mm-hmm. So to sit there and say these things don't occur, the cops don't do that, I don't know. I like police. I'm a law and order guy, but there's a libertarian streak in me with respect to the police power that says they got to be checked. And so I think my police program would start that. It's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to stop cops killing people, but it might stop a cop from following you around Sanborn Park and you know, profiling you. If he knows, hey, I know that guy. That's, you know, that's Isaac Jarris. I know him. I met him the last week, you know. There you go. So
thank you. That's great. Okay, we are a bit short on time. There is one question in the chat to the group. If you have an additional question, put it in quickly. But here, Diana asks, do you believe in affirmative action? And if so, do you see concrete ways that the city of Robbinsdale can take affirmative actions to hire BIPOC for all city positions, both outside as well as physically inside City Hall?
No, I'm not a proponent of affirmative action. It's a hotly, you know, debated topic. I don't think that that's a good solution. You have to, you know, it's discriminatory in my opinion. The downside to that is you can still have sort of a behind the scenes affirmative action where we know we want, for example, BIPOC police officers. You don't need a policy in place to know that if I've got two competing candidates and one of them's black, I'm going to go with the black guy. That's not an affirmative action policy. That's the community needs it policy. So the question is, how do you get, and one problem with affirmative action is that there's only, you know, you're limited to your labor supply, for lack of a better word. There was in the police department, there was a chief of police that was talking about, the question was, how come we don't have more persons of color on the police force? And one of the arguments was, you know, and it's true, every police department wants them. And they there's only so many people of color who go to the police academy. I don't know why they don't want to go be more cops. I didn't want to be a cop. I just, you know, it's a preference thing. But everyone's trying to get the same limited group of people to work there, and they can't, and then it's a problem. So employment with the city, I'm not in favor of affirmative action, but as a set policy, because I don't want to discriminate against a more qualified person just to have to check a racial box. I just don't think that that's the right thing to do. But I think it works itself out if people do apply. I think that's kind of a hidden, like, well, you know, we need that kind of person on board. So probably not the answer you want, but you know, that's my honest opinion.
Okay. Well,
I'm available for more questions. If you guys want to go over, I don't need to get out of here. So
okay. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Let me take a look at camera view. Not a lot of us are on camera, so you can always like turn on your camera and wave if you have another question.
Could we circle back to what's alarming about the city manager and the direct impact on racial, like, just throw some examples out. I'd be curious to know what those are.
Well, I think, again, if it's okay with the group, that I speak a little bit about this. I know that there are some members of the group who are concerned with the fact that the person who holds the city manager role doesn't have a term limit. Also, I think another issue related to it is the hiring of the police chief. And sort of the organizational, like the org chart of Robbinsdale, it seems
right,
that the police chief reports to the city manager. So I think there are that's what some of the concerns are in terms of the amount of power that was used in the question. if that makes
Okay,
sense.
that is a great example about the chief of police being a direct report to the city manager. That's an issue. That's concerning to me. It's one thing if you're the chief, or you're the head of the Parks and Recs, and you're reporting to the city manager, or you're the head of the city engineer. Policing is a special thing. Policing is what's the largest part of the budget. It is the thing that the city is actually supposed to do. Like when you think about and I'm sorry, I'm a philosophical guy, but if you think about why you need any kind of structured government, right? It's the first and foremost thing is you got to protect us. I mean, we don't want lawlessness. And so policing is a major part of what a city exists in the first place, why they exist in the first place. And so perhaps the head of that charge, that endeavor should answer to the council. Perhaps there should be, I'm just spitballing here, but the council's made up of very intelligent people. In terms of gauging whether this person can do the job, I don't want to disparage city managers because I think that's what we got is great, but the idea being, I don't see how, if you're a city administrator, are you better at assessing whether the police chief is going to be good at his job as opposed to, Bill Blonigan, who's a lawyer? I'm sure he's had I'm a lawyer. I've done some criminal defense. I know what policing is like. So yeah, I'd like to see that. If there's no say by the city council and whether there's an up or down vote on a hire, that's troubling, at least for that position. Other things are rather more mundane. I don't think people get up in arms about who the city engineer is, and maybe that's something we can do. But so yeah, that's a concern, and I'm glad that you brought that to my attention.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Again, I don't see any additional questions, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. Sure. Charles, is there a good way for those in the group or those who watch the video later? How do we find you online? How do we get in touch if there are further questions?
Well, I have a website. It's charlie4ward1.com. That's the number 4 and the number 1. So Charlie, number 4, ward, number 1.com. You can email me at birdtownchaz, birdtownchaz @gmail.com. And feel free to give me a call, 612-443-8710. So.
Great. I put those in the chat for the group. If they want to get in touch with you, they certainly can. Thank you so much for your time tonight. It was really nice to meet you. I would also like to thank the Robbinsdale for Racial Justice team for supporting the project through scheduling and formulating these questions. I mentioned this before, but I think everyone in this group is going to be really good about voting this year. So I just want to encourage you again, find 3 people at least to remind them to get registered and to vote. If you do need more information on voting absentee by mail or drop off, you can go to hennepin.us/elections. So again, thank you, Charles, so much. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. I really think, we may disagree on things, we may disagree on methods, but the issues have to be brought to the table. So I appreciate your work.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye. Go vote.